And one of the, of course, most celebrated and recognizable images coming out of Egypt. This is divine Isis suckling her divine son Horus. And the suckling is always the goddess, the mother, holds out her left breast, which is the heart breast. So the understanding of the child suckling from the breast, which is right at the heart energy, means that you have the three levels of the heartbeat and the energy coming from the milk and coming from the breast into the child's mouth. Now it is these images of Isis enthroned, nursing her male child, which through time and over thousands of years found their way all over the Mediterranean. And I said yesterday, apropos of what I don't know, remember that Paris was one of the great, Paris in France was one of the hugest temple complexes to Isis, which just shows you how these great religions spread, always coming from the east and the south, in this case from the south in Egypt, moving up from the south. The other goddess is coming from what is today Turkey, and coming across the Mediterranean and settling, moving up through what is today southern France and into France, and then of course also to Sicily, and then moving up what is today Italy. Images of the Great Mother. And these are the images which came right into the Catholic Church as the images of Mary with the child Jesus sitting in her lap as the Savior, images of the Savior figure. And the blackness from the beginning associated with her chthonic, the darkness, the wealth, the richness of her fertility. Remember that black has always been the color associated with the richness of the earth. So anything black means the fullness of riches. It's like as heavy as it can get with energies. This beautiful image from a tomb, divine Isis holding or wearing, the gods and goddesses in Egypt wear their signs very often on top of their heads. So here is Isis. She is throne, wearing throne, and her twin sister Nephthys. Now this is the goddess we saw in that abstract form the first day, reaching up and pulling the old sun down into her arms. This is the goddess of night. So the goddess of light, of day, the goddess of night, darkness. And the symbol she carries on her head is like a large bowl up on a pedestal. You look at an image like this, these two divinely gorgeous dark black women, and think what it would have been like to have been grown up worshiping two black women. If we had grown up with the understanding of these two gorgeous, goddesses as implying the moon and the sun and their daily movements in our lives, and that they were twin sisters, so to speak. And of course they are twin sisters, and they are the sisters of divine Osiris, the lord of the underworld. And black Artemis, from the beginning, Artemis has been associated with blackness, with darkness. She, of course, is the great goddess associated with solitude, virginity. She's the one goddess who had the cheek to go to, of course this is Greek-Roman mythology, which is late mythology really, had the cheek to go to her father, thundering Zeus, and say, I can't stand living up here with all of you people. I want to go down and live on earth and live in the forest and be alone. And he gave her permission to do that. So the images of her very often are of a young woman running through the woods with her pack of dogs. And she is certainly the goddess that I have, since I've been a teenager and first learned her story, have been associated with in my own heart. And many of the early statues of her show her in her blackness, at least with a black face or a black head, in this case, black hands. And associated also with the bullfight. These used to be thought of as breasts, implying fertility, but in fact, some scholars now say that these are undoubtedly literally bulls' balls. The sacrifice of bulls was the highest possible sacrifice that people could offer to a god or a goddess in the ancient world. And of course, after the blood was collected, after the slaying of the animal, the blood was collected and the animal was dismembered, and certain parts of the animal were given to the temple, other parts were given to the family that had made the sacrifice. Other parts were put aside for the needy, for people who lived in almsgiving. They were given as alms. And at the end of the day, the balls literally were tied on thongs, and the person who had paid for the sacrifice, and you can imagine, huge amounts of money were spent on these bulls for the man of the house, the man of the estate, to have purchased this. Then he would have taken these and put them around a statue of Artemis, so that through time, and this is a very late piece, the images of the many tokens of sacrifice would have ended up around her neck, and therefore eventually were actually carved into very late pieces, images of her. She's associated with childbirth, but not with nurturing. She's the virgin. She is not the mother. Right. She is anti-mother, so to speak. She's associated with a childbirth because she was born of the goddess Leto. Her father was Zeus, and of course in Greek mythology, if you know Greek mythology, Zeus was always raping this lady and that lady, and this virgin and that virgin. And Leto was the mother. She conceived from Zeus, by Zeus. She gave birth to twins, and the first child born was Artemis. And as soon as Artemis was born, she immediately was an adult. And then she midwifed the birth of her son, Apollo, so that her brother, the twin brother. So Artemis and Apollo are twin brothers, and only through time did the Apollonian image of light, masculinity and light and authority become, in other words, in the beginning was the balance, male, female, light, dark. And only gradually was the male principle elevated to represent, what does Apollo represent? Order, discipline, light. Do you know what I mean? All of everything associated with mind rather than heart and instinct. And the Artemis was devalued because she is the goddess, so to speak, of wildness and wild places and anti-city and anti-community, all of the things that, of course, society is all about. The woman free, the woman who is not bound by a man, bound by society. And at the same time, hugely important in terms of as a worshipful goddess. So we're talking about now these images of the darkness of Isis, the darkness of Artemis. And we have the darkness of Kali, the great, one of the powerful dark goddesses of India, which eventually, little by little, through time, moved into the West and is still celebrated in southern France. She is now called Sarah Kali, and her feast is celebrated for several weeks toward the end of May into June by the Gypsy people. She is their particular, very, very specific goddess. And it's these three sources that come finally to rest in the Black Madonnas inside the Catholic Church. All of this energy, this understanding of the blackness of the goddess would have been not only passed around in a mercantile way, of course, with trading, as I've said again and again, this a crossing of civilizations through time, with people sailing north or sailing west, sailing east. I mean, so that merchants carried all these stories and all these images around. And then beginning in roughly the year 1000, a little bit later, for several hundred years, the Crusaders moved from the west into the east, trying to regain the Holy Land, which had been captured, of course, by the Muslim people. The Muslim religion, as you know, it was a desert religion that came out of the deserts of Arabia. All of the early Muslim conquests were in the 600s, and of course they swept within a very short time, had swept all the way into Spain. And the Crusaders certainly would have brought back images of these goddesses back into their towns, into their own churches. And what were images of the Great Mother with a son now became images of Mary. And they were understood as from the beginning as having chthonic earth energy. Remember that chthonic is the energy of the earth, the fertility of the earth, the darkness of the earth, the richness of wet earth, all of those energies associated, that women associated to themselves. And then finally they were made as Black Madonnas, and this began happening about the year 1000. And many of them are associated with miraculous being found, in woods and in caves and guarded by wild animals and so on. They all have their own little story, but basically the story is of finding in the wilderness and bringing into the church and being recognized as images of Mary and Jesus. This is a beautiful one, elegant Romanesque period in Germany. She is in Hildesheim. A beautiful, most of them are carved wood, very banged up, usually through the ages. And she has been completely gold leaf. Usually they're not this elaborately gold leafed. But I think you can see even through the gold, you can see the beautiful elements of a Romanesque period between 1150 and maybe 1200. The Black Madonna at Rocamadour, which is in southern France, and to the west, southwestern France, and you see how old she is and how many wars she's gone through, so to speak. These crowns were put on in the Gothic period, maybe 500 years after the fact. But she's in her own. She's way up on a hill, and is Rocamadour is one of the great pilgrimage centers for the Black Madonna. At any of these shrines of the Black Madonna, millions of people come each year to pray before them. She's a very, very powerful one. She's, from my experience, one of the most powerful ones. Many of the Black Madonnas in France were destroyed in the French Revolution. This is a close-up of her face. You see over time the original wood has been covered with gesso. This white peeling stuff is, of course, the gesso. Then over the gesso, it would have been painted many, many times. And this embossed filigree would have been put on in the Gothic period. But she is at least 1,000 years old. And she is probably about, again, 18 inches high. And the first image I showed, the metal Gothic crown was put over the original carved crown, obviously. This is one of the really deeply contemplative pieces. You see these downcast eyes are very powerful. She's in her own chapel. There's nothing in the chapel but her and a million candles burning all the time. And this is a little Black Madonna that a few of us found in Germany. We were in the Rhine Valley about 4 or 5 years ago to celebrate the 900th anniversary of the birth of Saint Hildegard. And we were wandering around here, there, and yonder, and just stopped in this church. We had heard that there was a Black Madonna there, and sure enough, there she is. This is a little village, a tiny little farming village in the Rhineland called Leuterhäusen. So you see there are hundreds of them, and you can happen upon them. This is another extraordinary one in a tiny little village, farming village called Laval in the mountains in southern France. And you see when you see an image like this with just this little sort of a disembodied head, it means that she's holding the child, but then when they make these elaborate cloths, gowns, they leave a little hole for the child's head. And of course, there is objects of devotions. You know, the local women, you know, change their clothes and different crowns for the feast days, and all according to the liturgical colors of the Catholic turning of the liturgical year. So they are much loved and venerated. Actually, this one is now probably back where it belongs. At the time, it's in a great massive cathedral in Lyon. And the church was being restored, and much work was being done. So they moved her to a temporary side chapel, and in a way it was kind of nice because you can actually be right. You can touch her, you can be right with her. You can see what an old piece she is. The throne has rotted away, and she's now mounted on this bronze piece, which in turn is mounted on this pillar. Now this probably was simply eaten away, or who knows? I mean, because the thing is, through as I say, we're talking about 1,000 years. They would have been, you know, but this war went through, and they ran and, you know, dug a hole and buried her and hid her, and then she was put up again, and then another war happened, and then the French Revolution. I mean, they all bear the scars of time. And many of them, I'm certain, are simply rotted because they forgot where they buried them. And by the time they dug them up, they were filled with wormholes and everything else. It's astonishing to be with them because they are all hugely marked with their age. And, you know, bits have fallen off. I mean, this looks like the baby Jesus has lost one of his feet. I can't remember exactly. They just have a huge presence, I can only tell you. Another one in southern France in the mountains called Orcival. This is an unusual one because she's actually bronze. She's not, most of them are carved in wood. This is a much more elaborate one. And this is my beloved Lady of Montserrat. She's called the Little Dark One, the Little Morena. And she is in the great basilica on top of or in the mountain of Montserrat, which is about an hour's drive outside of Barcelona, if you're ever in that area. She's been wonderfully restored. Because she's always been inside a monastery, is very, very well preserved. She of course would have been hidden away during the Civil War in the 30s in Catalonia, when Catalonia was ravaged and many churches destroyed, and kind of like the French Revolution thing in the 30s in northern Spain. But she's very, very beautiful. And this is my namesake place. This is the monastery of Einsiedeln, and this is the black marble chapel of Our Lady of Einsiedeln. And this is a close-up. Again, all of these elaborate gowns, and the gowns, I mean, even the clothing, so to speak, is hundreds and hundreds of years old, filled with precious jewels and pearls, and you see she's dripping with the gifts of wealthy people who come to even with the earrings. It's amazing. Now, this is also interesting because over time, as they've been destroyed and burned or hacked to pieces and otherwise, and you know, made unrecognizable, if they have to be replaced, in this case, this monastery burned to the ground twice, and each time she was replaced, and they tended to be replaced according to the style of the time. Remember that this is before the age of photography, so unless they had a very accurate drawing, they have nothing to go on but a tribal memory, so to speak, so that this is one of the images that would have evolved from a very ancient image, because tradition has it that Meinrad himself carried a Black Madonna into the wilderness. In that case, the original Black Madonna of Einsiedeln would have been from the 800s, which of course would be a very, very old one. This is my own painting based on Our Lady of Einsiedeln, and there are two ravens associated with Saint Meinrad, like Saint Benedict, who lived with him and brought food and so on. And after he was martyred, it's the two ravens that flew into the village to alarm the village people that something had happened, and they raced to the hermitage and found him dead. This is Meinrad's skull, the original St. Meinrad skull from the 800s. And this is my umbilical connection to the story of St. Meinrad at Einsiedeln. The red rose is always associated with the womb, with creative energies. Or I think it's probably my laying flowers at the shrine is probably what I had in mind. The thing is, you don't really have this in mind. Suddenly I'm painting and roses start appearing and I think, oh, look at the roses, and I paint the roses. It's only afterwards that you think, what are those roses? What are they, you know what I mean? And it's like they just mean intent. But I have a feeling that it's like unconsciously I was laying roses into this memory, which is my own, you know, not only my own familial, not that it's a memory. I mean, I only know this because I know the story. It's not that I obviously knew the original Meinrad, but he died in 1925, so my mother was alive when he died. So it's not that far removed. And of course, the famous Black Madonna of Częstochowa in Poland, that some people say brought down communism. This is the great image that the Polish people, the Polish workers, carried around. They wore it on their lapel and fought the unions, fought the communist unions, until finally they won. Of course, you know the story. It's communism fell in Poland, and then it was just a domino effect until finally it is no more. How quickly that all happened when you think back on it. The scars, this is a painting, by the way. It's a canvas, and these scars are somebody who attacked the painting with a knife. Not recently, I don't know how long ago. And this fabulous Frida Kahlo painting, she simply calls it My Nurse. Now look at this for a Black Madonna. Here is the energy behind, from the like the Aboriginal Black Madonna that all of these Black Madonnas are based on. I mean, all of these images were carved by people, by artists from time. And when I think of probably what the earliest images of Artemis look like, it's phenomenal, because she was associated with you know, darkness from the beginning. But of course, through time, we simply don't have them anymore. This beautiful nursing again from the left breast, the heart breast, and it's like all the little veins and capillaries themselves draining down into her mouth. And like the Huichol piece, the heavens partaking in this liquidity, the liquidity of the milk, the liquidity of the milky skies filled with water and the milk of creation. And before we stop just briefly, to remind you that in fact what Christians identify with so strongly as the Trinity is in fact a very, very ancient concept, except that it's not a trinity of men, it's a trinity of women. Surprise, surprise. And the images of the triple goddess manifesting as Virgin, Mother, and Crone go way, 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 way back in time. We know her in Greek mythology as Hecate, the goddess of darkness, but remember that the power of the old moon, which makes her the most powerful moon, is that she is the final cradle that holds all of the energy of the full moon, all of the energy of the virgin moon. So she bears the weight of all of the phases of the moon, which have brought her to that place of dying, so to speak. So that the vanishing of the moon, the most powerful moon, is dark of moon. The dark of moon, heavy with the weight, which will rebirth itself every 28 days in the night sky. So the images of the moon, of course, it's one of the most ubiquitous, much more ubiquitous through time than images of the sun. The moon always being more mysterious than the sun because, of course, it's so much easier to see the sun rising and setting over the opposite horizons. Whereas the moon, every time she rises in a different place. You don't know what she's going to look like. You don't know where she's going to be. I mean, the mystery is hauntingly beautiful, and therefore has that magic about it that the sun has never been associated with magic. These are in Germany. This is a monument in Germany, and Germany is filled with these Roman monuments. Remember that the Romans occupied the area today we call Germany. If you're ever in Cologne, there's a fabulous museum, one of the finest museums in Europe, and it's simply about the 500 years of Roman occupation, filled with images like this, although this is still out in the countryside. The thing about these images like this of they're called the three Madonnas, the Tre Madonne, the three women, the three phases of the sun. They're still venerated, so that when we were there in September, as I say, I had gone with a few friends to visit all of the shrines associated with the life of Saint Hildegard. What was amazing about them, I don't know if you can see, there were flowers. Women were still bringing flowers to them, still bringing fruit. There were things tucked, fruits and flowers and grains tucked into their clothing. It was most moving, I can't tell you. So what they have on their laps are like carved baskets with carved fruit. These are the real fruit that people have brought them. That's what I mean, so that they're there, but you can see that they're tended according to the seasons of the year. And that being, we were there in September, it was harvest time. They were only just bringing in the grapes. One of them people had brought grapes just harvested and laid them down. Most of the offerings are down here on the ground, but some of them are actually pushed into the bas-relief sculpture. And here's the really oldest triple goddess we have, of grandmother, mother, and daughter. This is one of the great masterpieces in Heraklion, in the northern port city in the island of Crete, off the southern coast of mainland Greece, of course. This is a huge ivory piece, much destroyed through time. It's dated about 3,500 BC, so it's about 5,000 years old. And I don't know if you can see the intimacy of this, but I'm going to draw it for you, so to speak. This is the daughter, and this is her arm, and she brings her hand up and embraces her mother's arm, the grandmother has swung her arm around, so that these are the union of two hands here. And then the daughter's arm comes round and embraces her mother's hand, so that the mother and the daughter are clasped together, and then the grandmother brings her arm down and embraces her granddaughter. and the granddaughter's arm comes up and hangs onto the mother, the arm of the grandmother. It's a beautifully, completely interknotted, interwoven daughter, granddaughter, daughter, grandmother. And this is the original Trinity. The original Trinity is, of course, the phases of the moon, but when through time, when artists started to manifest this in sculpture and in painting, of course we don't have any of the painting anymore because that would have been the first to disappear. But this intricately carved piece is quite utterly astonishing.
How big is it?
Roughly 9 by 9 and maybe 10 inches high. It's like a huge, if you can imagine a huge cube of ivory. The elephant must have been 1,000 years old, honest to God, to even have tusks this size. I mean, obviously what you're looking at was originally, you know, a huge tusk on a hugely old elephant. Here is a more typical classic. When I say classic, I mean obviously Greek-Roman times. This is a manifestation of Hecate as the triple goddess and the 3 phases of the moon. And these were placed at what were called trevias, the 3 ways. When one road divided and forked into 2, we're used to the Roman grid, which is this. But the ancient movement of roads was like this, and then this road became this, and this became the great trevia, the 3 ways. And obviously, you can imagine that right here, the center of the trevia, would have been these pillars, literally pillars this high. I mean, you can see them in museums all over Europe. They're about this high, and they're in the round. Of course, it's like a huge column. And or they're forced into the same. Usually they are a column, so you have a face this way, a face this way, a face this way. This has been articulated so the 3 faces are looking at you, but I think you can feel the roundness of this, or the squarishness of it anyway. And each face looks in the direction of the way the person is either, so that when you're going along a road, you see her and then go around her, and then the other goddess sees your back, so to speak. They were very important to travelers as signs of security and way stations. And I mean, to meet at the trevia was the place of the triple way. And you see that as the goddess of night, she's holding 3 torches. You can't see the 3rd torch because it's around the other side. But images of Hecate always show her bearing a torch. She is the guide through the darkness. So this time of the year, as Persephone descends into the underworld, Hecate will be there waiting for her, holding a torch to guide her then through the underworld. And again, St. Anne, Mary, and Jesus, the triple, the Trinity, the alternative Trinity inside the Catholic Church. St. Anne, Mary, and now instead of being a daughter, of course, because it's inside the Christian faith, it's Jesus elevated as the divine child. But in the beginning, the granddaughter was the daughter who was the divine child. Germany was especially overtaken with devotions to St. Anne. When you're in museums in Germany, there are thousands of beautiful statues like this. So they must have been one of the most common groupings of statues in medieval homes. But I love it that Anne is holding Mary's hand.